schedule for this year's RHS Chelsea Young Florist of the Year was to design and create a jockey silk to be worn by a jockey at a race meeting. Now, I was actually off when my boss, when the information came through to the shop, and my boss rang me and said, "Joe, your schedule's here." And I was like, "Okay, what is it?" He said, "You've got to design and make a jockey silk." My next question was, "What's a jockey silk?" I had no idea what one was, and then he was like, "You know, it's the top they wear," and I was like, "Oh Jesus, this is going to be a very long couple of months." Jockey silks have to look like a jockey silk. They have to be certain colours, they have to be certain, certain form. There's not a lot of scope with it, whereas if I said to you, perhaps, could you design a dress? There are a million different things you could do, whereas with a jockey silk, it has to be pretty geometric, quite in-your-face colours, so it was a challenge to really work with that schedule and do something creative at the same time. I made my exhibit from scratch completely. I designed it and then obviously made the fabric base and then added all the detail that you see onto here, so it almost had a structure. That's why I made all these tiny teardrop shapes, some out of fabric, some out of lace, some out of aspidistra leaves, and really spent a long time building a strength into the design, so it almost has a corset-like feel to it. So when I started making the design, it started with the fabric base, which you see here, which is a purple taffeta, and then laced over this is a very fine purple lace. All this was sewn in to give me the basic form, and then from there we added these felt strips in. Now you can hardly see them, but there is actually felt bands just here and just here, which give the actual structure some support. They're strong strips of felt which have been covered in a satin and then a lace, and then all these tiny teardrop shapes I wired onto and handmade myself to create, to give it a kind of form, really, to give it a bit of strength and a bit of support to add the flowers onto. The exhibit has to look fantastic, not just for, the Sunday night when I put it in, for, the Monday morning, for the Tuesday, for the Wednesday. So for me, it was all about Phalaenopsis orchids. It was all about materials that would live long, that would hold up in this kind of weather, and of course would be suitable to be worn, so nothing too 3D, nothing too dimensional, just quite flat, quite light flowers. It's always such a difficult thing to know what the judges are looking for, because of course, as I'm not a judge, I don't really know the specifics or the angles they're looking for, but I always try to just do the very best that I can do. I always look towards excellent technique, I always look towards a good blending of colour, and really making sure all those connections within the design really add up. For example, connecting the texture, connecting the colour, making sure that the shapes of the leaves are all pulled in together, there's good harmony. It's all of those different things that really I have to be aware of. So when I'm finishing something, it's about connecting all those tiny points that really make the whole thing come together. As you know, I love competing, and I've done a ton of competitions, things like World Skills and the Euroflairs competition at RHS Tatton Park last year, and of course the Interflora Florist of the Future, which I won back in 2009. So competing is not something that's kind of new to me, but it's still amazing to be here at Chelsea, and it's the third year I've exhibited, and it's the third time I've got gold and best in show, so I'm absolutely over the moon.